Hi everyone. So today's YouTube Live, it's all about when not to pronounce the R consonant. So you're going to find the R consonant in the spelling, and this occurs on 7 sounds. So I'm going to send you in the chat box a list of these 7 sounds. So it sounds like ear, as in near. Let me go in order of my list actually. We've got air, as in air, and far. So R as in far. So we've got ear, air, R as in far. What's next on my list? Or as in for. Ua as in cure. As in were. And as in water. There's 7 sounds. I'm going to go through them and I'm going to tell you what you need to do instead. Okay. So obviously, when we pronounce an R consonant, the tongue comes up to the middle of the palate roughly. And then we take the sound back into these cavities. So what we do when we have an R consonant is this very deliberate movement of the tongue, and it kind of hangs in the middle of the mouth, not touching anything, but it's drawn back. So what we do for all of these sounds is we keep the tongue forwards. So that's the trick. So do not move your tongue for these sounds, essentially. By the way, as we go along, if you have any questions, please do just post them in the comments below. And like I said, I'm going to work chronologically through my list. Struggled a bit at the beginning to actually find those tiny words and to distinguish them, but there are 7, and I'll go through them chronologically so as not to miss any. So we're going to start with ear. Okay, so here this is a diphthong. We've got the E part of the diphthong, which is E, and then which is down here. Okay, so the last part of that word really essentially is the schwa sound, uh. There is no R. Okay, so what do you do for an? The tongue is just in its neutral position, hanging loosely in the middle of the mouth. The mouth is not particularly open, just very slightly, and we're focusing on the throat, near. So Fudo has said to me, what if I don't hear this British R at the end? Well, you won't hear the R because there is no R. And this is what it's all about. Does that make sense to you? Am I confusing you? There is essentially no R. The R is silent. So let's call this silent R, okay? So it's a silent R. It's in the spelling, but we don't say it. We don't pronounce it. So you're never going to hear it here, okay? Apart from, okay, always an exception in English. Apart from, you will hear it if you've got a word, for instance, like remembering, okay? If there's a vowel after the R, you pronounce it. So if you change these words in some way and you add something, then you're going to pronounce the R. And you're also going to pronounce it if you use intrusion. This is a whole different story. So if we take near, for instance, so if I say, let me just write it down for you so you get what I'm talking about. He's near. Okay, he's near. Okay, there is no R there, but there is something instead of R. There is, yes. In the word near, it's going to be the schwa sound. So it's down here. I'm not using my tongue. Do you remember I said a moment ago, maybe you weren't here, but I said, if you pronounce the R consonant, the tongue is drawn back to the middle of the mouth. And it doesn't touch the palate, actually. It doesn't do this or anything. It's just drawn back. Okay? So there is no R. Instead, the tongue is going to be positioned forwards for the schwa sound, near. Does that make sense, Fudo? Okay. So you said for me, it sounds like a normal or schwa. It sounds like a schwa, near. Exactly, it is a schwa. That's the thing. So I think the key for you, Fudo, would be to go in the dictionary and look at the symbols. If you're familiar with a sound like a schwa, you're going to recognize that there is no R in the symbols because the symbol for R is just the letter. Okay, so you're going to notice that the R isn't there in the symbols, and this is where the truth is. You see, we really don't speak as we spell in British English, and this is what makes it quite confusing at times. Instead, we speak pretty much following the symbols rather than the letters, which I know is a bit crazy. So I would say that the complete opposite of British English is Spanish, where every single letter is going to be pronounced. Okay, makes it very easy, and it makes British English quite complex at times. So that's why listening is so important, and this is why I'm helping you here with this session today. So, okay, coming back to it. So I've said he's near. So I finished with a schwa down here, near. What have I wanted to say? Here it comes. The exception, there's always one. He's near us. If I say he's near us, do you hear the R then? Because it's there. And this is because this is called intrusion, okay? Intrusion. I have a video on intrusion, and after the session, I'll post it. So he's near us. And this is to do with connected speech, because I'm linking he's near with us, because us begins with a vowel. He's near us. This might be a bit complex, a bit advanced for some people. But if you're an advanced speaker, that's very, very useful to look up intrusion. But it's also very useful for anyone who does pronounce their R's when they shouldn't, because you'll hear that there is no R in near. Okay, unless there's any more questions, I'm going to move on to the next one. Okay, and the next one is air. I've got air on my list. So I've got air, care, and fair. And what do we hear there? And also, what do we see with the symbols? If you look in the comments box, you're going to see that I sent a message in the chat box. Maybe you can see the chat box right now. I hope so. And you're going to see that with air, you've got the symbols. Sorry, there should have been a comma before between dear and air. And you've got air, care, and fair. And we've got there is we've got an air and then a schwa. And the result is a long air that travels into the throat. Air, air, air. And look at my tongue. It doesn't come up for the R. Air, air, air. What does happen with the tongue is there's a dip in the middle, okay? Towards the back and in the middle, there's a dip as the sound travels back. A common mistake is that people push the tongue forwards and get, listen to this, air, air. That's what happens if I push the tongue forwards. And that's a very London kind of accent, okay? Air. And we want air. So it travels into these cavities back here, okay? This space in what I call the cave area. Air, air. So no R. Anyone have a question on that, on the fact that there's an absence of an R consonant in this word air? Any questions? If you do, then please go ahead. I'll carry on for a few more minutes on this sound. So I'm going to say, I care. You're going to hear there is no R in I care. I'm just quite simply saying, I care. But what happens if I add a few words? You're going to see. Again, we're coming back to this concept of intrusion, which you might want to look up. So I care. I care about it. I care about it. So what happens there is, because I want to link care with about, I'm going to pronounce the R very slightly. And this, like I said, it comes back to this concept of intrusion. I care about it. So care, if, of, and in itself does not contain an R, but I will use that R to link. And this is where it can become confusing for some people. I care about it. But what I'm not getting is, I'm not getting that American care. Not that I'm very good at an American accent, but I'm not doing care. So there is no precise R consonant there. Hi, Jazim. Hello. So I care about it. We only get the R on the intrusion. Okay. Otherwise, if we're not connecting other words, or if the next word is a consonant. So can I think of an example? I care for him. I care for him. There's no intrusion there because for begins with a consonant. I'm only going to link care into a word that begins with a vowel, like about. I care about it. Otherwise, it's going to be I care for him. Care for him. And it's an e that travels into the throat. The tongue remains still and does not become drawn back like it would for an R consonant. So basically, it's learning to control your tongue and not allow it to kind of be drifting back into that position. Okay, so I'm going back to my list. What is next on my list? So that I'm going through it chronologically. So I've got air, but I've got R. I did a few examples of R in my posts this week on TikTok and Instagram. So R. So you might see this. The tip of the tongue comes down below the inside bottom teeth. Ah. And the sound then travels up. What happens is when the tip of the tongue is down, the back of the tongue naturally rises up, and then the sound travels to fill these cavities. So we're talking about the soft palate area and the cave area. And if you want to exercise these spaces, there are some really good warm-up exercises. So for the soft palate, in order to really feel any little movements there, so you're lifting a little bit for these kind of sounds, you can practice drinking through a straw. And I would just say that I would recommend that you do this on a routine basis. So as often as possible, drink through a straw to exercise that area, okay? Another good one is a yawn. And also I talk a lot about deepening the back of the mouth like a cave. And that stretches this whole area, okay? And this is where you want your R to travel to. So another great thing to do is to sing or chant. I'm not a great singer. I would say that I haven't ever really found my singing voice, but I can chant, and I think everyone can chant. So all we're going to do is we're going to chant R, and you can join in if you like. So tip of the tongue down. And as I said, automatically the back of the tongue is going to come up. And the sound travels back into these cavities. Ah, okay? So that's the R sound. So if I say, oh, how far? So we're going out today. Okay, how far? There's no R consonant. See my tongue positioning, far. But if I were to add, so I could start with how far. Let me add that to my notes so you can have a look. If I were to say, how far is it? What happens there? How far is it? The whole lot of linking going on, okay? How far is it? And we get, far is it? How far is it? Okay? Sorry, my massage chair's just gone off. I'm going to turn it off in case it's disturbing you. That's good. I thought it was broken. Okay. So, how far is it? Okay. So, I'm only getting the R because I'm linking far into is. Okay. And when I do pronounce the R, I just need to lift my soft palate. So, Jazim says, my problem is pronunciation. What do you mean by pronunciation? Because obviously we're kind of doing this now, aren't we? We're talking about how to uh, position the tongue for far. So ah, so the sound rises up. What do you mean by pronunciation? That's quite broad. You're talking about how to pronounce the R rather than not pronounce it, because we're working on not pronouncing it, aren't we? If so, I'll do a video on how to pronounce the R another day, okay? So today is when not to pronounce it, okay? But please do enlarge upon what you just said. I think you have to wait 60 seconds between posts anyway. So that's R. How far is it? Or how far? No R. And next one is or. So we've got for, okay? We've got more and door, or. Again, the tongue is forwards, more. It's more or less in the neutral, comfortable position that your tongue would be in if you weren't really talking. I would say sometimes mine touches against the inside of my bottom teeth slightly, and then my lips are coming forwards, or more. They're rounded, for, more, door. What we're really interested in here is the different position for the tongue. So with an R, without an R. So without an R, the tongue is neutral. With an R, it's drawn back and it's quite high in the mouth, but it's not touching the palate, okay? It's drawn back. And when we do pronounce an R, we have to lift the soft palate because we want the sounds in any words to travel back into this area. We don't want it to be in the mouth, so we don't want it to be, how far is it? I don't want to get stuck there around the tongue area. If I get stuck around the tongue area, I get, I don't want that. I want, how far is it? Is it? So I'm lifting my soft palate. So that takes us back to the warm up. And in order for you to use your soft palate, in order for you to pronounce the R correctly, you need to work on that area. So it's the warm up I mentioned earlier. So you might want to rewatch the video. So drinking through a straw, yawning, chanting some of these sounds, like long vowel sounds like R and or, are very useful as well. And that's how you're going to access and warm up this area. And I would say one of the main ways of correcting your pronunciation is to find the spaces where you want the sounds to resonate. That, and obviously using the correct muscles as well. So coming back to or, like I said, we have a few examples of words. So for more, no R. Okay. Why is there no R? There's no R because we've only got a consonant at the beginning of the next word, which is more. So for more, no R's, no R's. Writing in brackets, no R, four more, four more. So what are we doing instead? The tongue is forwards. It's not being drawn back. So you have to check yourself on your tongue position. And you might even want to look in the mirror when you're practicing. You can probably see what's going on in my mouth as I'm talking. If I just say a couple of words, four more, especially if I just finish on a word, more, tongue is forwards. But what about if I add a word beginning with a vowel? So I could say, there are four more of us, more, and then the tongue is going to come back. There are, and even in there as well. So let me do my links. There are four more of us. See, there's a lot of linking going on here. There are four more of us. There are four more of us. More of us. So Fudo said, I have problems mostly with hearing the difference between those English vowels, diphthongs, etc. My language has 6 vowels. Wow. All of those vowels sound to me like something between schwa and I understand that. Okay. So what we should do then is we should do a session on schwa compared to, I think you're probably saying just, is that right? Just give me a thumbs up if you mean because the symbol for is this, and I think you're probably talking about so schwa and you don't want your schwa to sound like an okay, because that's too strong. A schwa is like a non-sound, it's a weak sound down here. Okay, sometimes they hear the R at the ending, even if there is no R, they hear it even if there's not. So you need to improve your ear, and I'd recommend reading and listening simultaneously. So how do you do this? Or you purchase yourself a book, and then you purchase yourself the exact same audio book, and you read and listen simultaneously. It just comes with practice, really, Fudo. I don't know much, well, I don't know anything about you. So maybe you don't live in the UK, maybe you do. Obviously, if you live in England, you're going to be really hearing that speech all the time. If you're not living in England, then you need to expose yourself to the British accent to really catch on to those things. Ricardo says, is there a free, reliable software to test our pronunciation? That's an interesting question. I don't know. I know there's some software. There's actually just a website where you can put your sentence in, and it sends you back that sentence converted into the IPA symbols, which is quite useful if you're not sure which sounds these words contain. But I don't know about anything else. All I know is that obviously people come to me to get that kind of feedback. And Ricardo, obviously, if you want some feedback, you're welcome to attend my group coaching call. I've got one on Saturday. If you want to attend, then just send me a message, and I'll send you with your email address, and I'll send you the link to come on Saturday morning. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. So we were doing, which sound we're doing? I'm lost now. We're doing or. Okay, so you're hearing this, and to carry on. The next one's an interesting one. It's ua, and it's increasingly being replaced by the or sound we've just done a moment ago, for more. So some people pronounce every single word that comes under the category of being ua like or. So I once did a test with my dad and my sister. So my sister's my twin sister, so technically we should sound identical, but we don't really. although we have a similar voice. And my dad speaks very well. And I asked him to send me an audio back to me pronouncing a combination of or and ua words. My dad said he found it really hard, but he managed to kind of separate them. My sister pronounced every single ua sound as or, and I think that's very reflective of people in the UK today. So just as an aside, so some people do pronounce ua perfectly, and if you do, then carry on. So I'm gonna give you some examples. So we've got cure, pure, and sure. Okay. Some people would say cure, pure, sure. Some people would say cure, pure, sure. And something in between. So anyway, whatever you do, there is an R there, and we don't pronounce it. Okay, cure, cure. It goes down here, cure, cure, ooh, ooh, and the tongue is staying still. It's not being drawn back. Okay, so is there a cure? Scrolling down again. Is there a cure? No R, cure. The cure is sleep. Let's say the cure is sleep. That's my sentence. The cure is sleep. And look how suddenly there's an R. The cure is. It's a subtle R. Okay, that's what I want you to remember. And you absolutely have to lift your soft palate when you get to that R to have a nice clear is resonating back here. So again, if you want to practice that, you can do something like a yawn to find the space. The cure is. The cure is. I'm also using these muscles here. Just I wonder if anyone knows about the muscles here and their importance. So if I don't use them, the cure is. The cure is. Everything's resonating more here. The cure is. And I want it to travel into these cavities. So to find these muscles, you can stifle a smile. So imagine you've seen something funny and you're trying not to laugh. The cure is. The cure is sleep. Okay, and I'm really utilizing these cavities here when I'm speaking. And that's how you hear this nice sense of flow. If I don't use these enough, you're going to hear what's more like mumbling. And I might even trip over my tongue. My voice is going to resonate more in my mouth. So the curiously, curiously. It's not very clear. Whereas if I activate these muscles and I get my voice resonating back here, the cure is sleep. It's very clear, isn't it? So the warm-up's key to this, and you can find my warm-up in my videos. So if you do a search on my channel and you just put warm-up in, you'll get probably various videos. And each exercise is useful for different sounds. So really doing the whole thing is very useful. But if you're working on a specific sound, you might find that you want to use more one than another. So for the R consonant, for instance, I use these muscles. So stifling a smile and humming is good. And I also have to, like I said, lift my soft palate. So you might want to practice a bit of yawning or drinking through a straw. Even laughing, singing, chanting, humming opens up all these cavities. So you want to be doing that as much as possible throughout the day to remind yourself of where your voice needs to resonate in order to have nice, clear, strong speech. Okay, I'm carrying on with my list. So I'm now on as in were, word. What are my words actually, rather than making them up? Were, word, work. Okay, so I'm now on were. So I could say, where were you? Where were you? And for my I relax everything. My tongue's relaxed, my cheeks are relaxed, my jaw's relaxed. And I focus on expanding these cavities in the back here, okay? So you can just take a moment to chant where were you? Okay. The challenge here is that often for a W, people overly tighten their lips and then the ends up resonating here rather than back here. Wah, wah, wah. So you have to really find that space. So lots of deepening the back of the mouth like a cave. find that space. Where were you? Were. Okay. But what if I added a word beginning with a vowel? I guess you're all getting it now. We're going to then end up with the R. So there's this massive exception with this live today. So, um, so where were we? Let me think of my example now. Um, okay. If I were in your shoes. You heard this expression? It means that if I were in your position, if I were in your shoes, we're in. So I'm using the R for the link. So again, we're back to this concept of intrusion. If I were in your shoes, and like I said, I really have to make sure that I'm working my soft palate to take the sound out of my mouth. I don't want, if I were in your shoes, why were, or any kind of preoccupation with the tongue. I'm not very good at foreign accents. I'm just doing kind of whatever comes out of my mouth. So please don't feel offended if you think it sounds like anything in particular. If I were in, I'm lifting up here. If I were in, if I were in, if I were in your shoes. Okay, that's a good example of when we hear an R. Next one. So the last one is the schwa. So we've got the schwa in words like water, wonder, remember, and it's the last ER of these words. Water, wonder, remember. So a very simple question like, would you like a glass of water? Would you like a glass of water? Would you like a glass of water? Hi Ashok, great to see you here. Thanks for coming. So we're working on the last of these sounds. We're on number 7 with 7 sounds where the sound R is not pronounced in some situations. Okay, so if I look at the word water in and of itself, water, there's no R consonant. That R is silent, okay? Water. So what happens with my tongue? My tongue is in neutral position. It's quite high in my mouth, and I focus on my throat. We've got what we call the schwa here, water, water, no R. However, if the word after water, the next word, begins with a vowel, then I'm going to pronounce the R. So water is very good for you. So water, in fact, actually, I wouldn't say water is, but okay, we're going to say that on this occasion. I'd say water is very good for you. I'd make the contraction, wouldn't I? But we're going to do that. Is water is very good for you. Water is. Water is. So I'm going to be sending my sound up here. I'm pronouncing a little R for the link. Water is. Water is very good for you. But obviously, normally I'd say water is very good for you. So again, there would be no R because I would have just the schwa sound, waters. I could say water isn't. Water isn't on the menu. That would be strange, wouldn't it? Water isn't on the menu. Water isn't on the menu. Water isn't. Water isn't. So I've got the R there, but there is a bottle of water. There is a bottle of water. No R. Okay. Is everyone getting the hang of this? Right? I hope so. Always more challenging when there's no feedback. I don't see your faces. I don't see whether you're nodding or going, oh my God, what is all of this? Okay, so this was our last example. We're on the schwa sound. So 7 of 7 sounds. Quite a lot to do in half an hour. So if you've stayed with me and kept up with me all this time, well done, doing really well. But I'm sure you've probably got some questions. So you could either ask your questions now or you can ask them afterwards and I'll reply. Okay, so we've got water, wonder, and remember. And essentially all I'm doing here is I'm focusing a little bit more on the last consonant, water, and then I'm taking my attention down here, water. I just open the mouth gently. Everything's pretty relaxed because I'm focusing on my throat. So a really good exercise to help you to find this space is to lower your bottom jaw and hum. To really warm up this area. And you'll find that the more you do this, the more you're able to use this space. It's pretty much a case of if you don't use it, then you can't. Okay, so the warm up will really help you to find the different cavities that you need to resonate the sound in. So things like is very good. Another good one is exaggerated chewing and humming. The reason this is good is because, as well as getting the sound to resonate in the throat, you're activating the lower jaw area. And you'll notice that when your jaw comes up and is activated, you support the sound better and the sound becomes stronger. And actually, that's something we've got to do all the time when we're speaking. We have to support the sound. So the sounds are nice and strong. And we do this by activating the lower jaw slightly. So all those exercises like stifling a smile or exaggerated chewing and humming serve a massive purpose in terms of improving your speech. So I feel like we're kind of drawing to an end here. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than what I've told you, but at least now you have a better idea of this complex nature that is British spelling and how we don't always speak as we spell. And the R is a very common challenge for a lot of people. So there are a lot of accents where you do hear the R consonant, and some of these are also British. So in English, you've got Irish English and American English, Australian English, where I'm not sure about Australian, maybe not, but Irish and American, you hear the R consonant, okay? On all of these examples I've given you. But British English is different. We don't pronounce the R on words like water. We don't say water, we say water. Okay, if you have any questions, please do message me. And also, you're all welcome to come to my group coaching call on Saturday. It's for members of my membership, Fran's British Accent, but everyone has the right to come just once, just to see what it's all about. And then I'll be able to give you some feedback on your speech and answer your questions. I think this time we're working on TH, I think it's TH this weekend. So there's the aspirated breathy TH and the voiced one. I think those are the two we're doing. So if you'd like to join, then please do message me and I'll send you the link for the Zoom meeting. Thank you so much for coming today, or thank you so much for watching if you're not watching live. And please do come back to me if you've got any questions. Thank you, Ricardo, for that thumbs up. Really good to have some feedback. Thank you so much. Okay, take care, everyone. See you soon. Bye.